Hello everyone, this is Christina Wallace and today we're going to be making Gerbera. These are the tools that you would need for this operation. You could also check description for some individual pieces. So the first thing I want to do is to add a little bit of deco clay into the normal cold porcelain that I use, which is Fleur, and that is so it does not look slightly see-through when it's fully dry. Once you've added color to cold porcelain, it doesn't tend to last long. Sometimes it kind of goes rubbery and horrible by the end of the same day, and almost certainly it would be dry the next day depending on how much color you've added, and this is a lot of color, so try not to overmix your colored paste to avoid waste. I find that in terms of thin, delicate elements of your cutout not sticking to the surface, I find that it's a lot easier to work with paste once some color is added to it. But that said, I still recommend watching your surface and try to remember to add some corn flour to it. If not overdoing on it, it's always a good thing to do, because otherwise your cutout might just stick. So it's a good habit to keep an eye on dusting your surface. And this is just one of the ways you could vein your petals. I find that it gives it slightly asymmetrical veining. Basically, I just took a thin part of Easy Veiner and I use it as a veining brush, if you will. Once your cutouts are ready and you're happy with them, place them in a large flower former. That way it would pick up just the ends of your Gerbera to give it slight kind of a roundy shape. So when I said happy with your cutouts, I wouldn't actually say I'm 100% happy with my cutouts. Here you have a bit of fraying, but which could be tidied up at this point, but also the cutouts are a little bit thick for my liking here, and since they're very thin, it's quite hard to thin individual petal without losing shape. So yeah, basically I would roll them a little bit thinner, a touch thinner, if I was making another Gerbera, which I'm not, so we just leave it at that, shall we? Once your cold porcelain shape is cut and veined, you can actually ziplock it, make it really airtight, and that would allow you to leave your work at that particular stage and maybe come back to it tomorrow. So in that sense it's very, very flexible, but just make sure that it doesn't stay in a shape that you don't want it to end up as once it's there, which is why I kind of put it in those formers. And here I am preparing a little bit of clay for the middle. As it turned out, halving it wasn't really enough, and I would have just added a little bit of pink to the white to make the middle a lot lighter, because I wanted it to stand out as light in middle and didn't quite work out that way. And then I had to add a bit of pearl to make it pop up, which was really quite an unnecessary step. So yeah, make this bit lighter. And these cutters by F&M, they're actually quite fiddly to use, but proved to be the best solution for Gerbera. And the middle of Gerbera is quite tricky to kind of recreate, I found. Probably the trickiest bit of the whole flower, and the rest of the flower is really easy. So yeah, that worked really good. Go and look in your own cutters and see if you could adapt something. I'm not sure. I mean, this particular cutter, don't use it all that often, but it's good for this purpose. Very, very good for this purpose. So whether it warrants a purchase, I don't know. But for what it's worth, It's very fiddly to use, but the result is quite good. I'm quite liking it for this Gerbera. Okay, so on the background there you see an umbrella hook, a wire hook on which I plant all, or at least most, middles for my flowers. And I haven't actually recorded how to make one for this video. It wasn't on purpose and I'm not going to get in the habit of it, but I do have a separate video on how to make an umbrella hook and I'm gonna link it up in the description. So if you look at this brownish clay in my hand, I am adding water and making it as soft as possible, or softer than the rest of it, simply because I want for it to pick up enough detail from this self-made mold. And this mold I made out of 2-part putty that I'm going to link up in a minute, you'll see it. And basically, if you like your flowers to look individual, to have individual touch at least, I recommend having a bit of that silicone to kind of make your own molds of things here and there. It's very easy to use and it's just an option really to consider. I use it quite regularly for little things that I don't want to or can't buy really. So the way this little individual strands coming out of the cutter is quite fray, so it's a good idea to maybe curl them in a little bit and minimize the fray. It would take you a long time if you wanted to make it perfect, and maybe another way of doing this without buying a cutter would be to just cut some strands and then round them up a little bit. I don't know, but anyway, then you're gonna add a bit of glue to the bottoms of these little strands that you just tear off from the round. Sorry about the focus, missing focus in my camera. Yeah, so a bit of glue and then you just add them on and they're not going to fall off. If you use sugar, then I would probably attach the whole thing without having much sticking out, because obviously then it's a breakage, breakage risk. Okay, so here I've decided I'm going to do a couple of layers around the middle. That's pretty much as far as my patience are going to take me. Obviously you could do more if you think it looks good. Would I say it's a commercial flower? Yes and no. I mean, Gerberas could go quite large, so if you were to do it for your cake, etc., it would take a bit of space. On the other hand, the middle is really fiddly, and if you're trying to cut corners and make it less fiddly and less time consuming, then it starts to look a little bit weird and not really worth it. So yes, it's your call. But here's my finished proportions of the middle and the sides, and yeah, I'm trying to add a bit of zing really to the middle, because the middle doesn't look lighter, which is not the look that I was trying to go for. And so here is your ready gerbera, and I am rather liking it, I must admit. Do use toothpicks or whatever to space it out, or you could probably hang it upside down as well, but then it's going to be too close in. So yeah, do pay attention to the way it dries, you know, find your preferred way. And that's yeah, that's the ready flower yet again, and I do like the way the layers are spaced out. I think I have about 4 layers there, and that's plenty. Now I have also some tinted paste left, which is going to be going waste very, very quickly. Or, you know, I could come up with another pink flower to make, but then I have to mix in some more normal clay, and you know, where does that end? So just trying to use some. And basically, if you look at gerbera in real life, obviously it has a bit of a kind of bottom that it sits on, that all the petals are sitting on and coming out of, that little base. So logically I would probably have to make it out of green clay, but since it's going to be covered, as you can see in a minute, I'm just going to use this pink clay, not to waste it, basically. Now I am going to make a calyx for this gerbera, and it's going to be very easy to do it. I'm going to not put a huge amount of creative thought in it, and instead I'm going to use my little cutters, just normal daisy cutters, and yeah, pretty much do for the bottom of it what I did for petals themselves, which is extremely lazy, and it could be done a little bit more creatively. Just maybe cut the individual petals into 2 and then shape them, and so on and so forth. But I am not going to go into that superhuman effort. It's just something you could kind of look at and see, I could do so and so with it. I could make it look prettier or more detailed, but yeah, I'm just going to stick to a very simple and very basic way of doing it, because yeah, I'm starting to get a little bit bored with this gerbera by now. So yeah, let's see what I'm going to do with it. Again, always make sure that you thin whatever it is, the detail, the element that you've cut out to use on your flower. Thinning is extremely important. Even a slight thinning could make a difference from your flower looking quite amateurish to it looking really, really pretty and natural, even if it's stylized. So yeah, the thinning skill and remembering to thin everything, it offers a good value for money, I'd say. Now you have the second layer exactly the same. Try not to overlap them exactly on top of each other, but go over the gaps because of all the glue and stuff. And yeah, I found it actually quite tricky to get them to go over the gaps. Maybe add less glue, or perhaps dry your shape out, each of those calyx shapes out a little bit. I didn't have the time and didn't think of doing that, but actually that would make nicer shape Okay, so I'm sorry to do it to you again in the same video, but I actually have a separate video on stemming. It's for rose, but it's exactly the same. I am going to put it in the description, one of the first two links, to save the space on this video. And yeah, I hope that you've enjoyed this particular tutorial. I hope that you are now set to make your own gerberas if you like those flowers. And yeah, wonderful. Thanks for popping in, and I will see you next week with a new tutorial.